All right, good morning. So I'm going to talk about dealing with change, particularly in the business world, in corporate chaos. Real quick, just a couple questions. How many of you have gone through some crazy, unbelievable change in your company at any time in your past? Easy question, right? How many think that's probably going to happen again at some point in the future? How many of you think that it's going to happen today? That it's happening right now? Not crazy change, perhaps. However, I will tell you that change is ever present. It is always happening. That's the first thing. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of things that I think you can run with, but I'm going to do it in like 5 or 6 minutes. So I'm going to pick up the pace. Right now I'm talking slow, just so you know. So I'm going to give you as much as I possibly can. The first thing I want you to think about, though, is that change is always happening. Right? You've probably heard this terminology before, that just like death and taxes, it is guaranteed, it is unavoidable. And I like to use the famous quote from my friend Bob Dylan, there is nothing so stable as change. It's going to happen, right? You know that. You know that for a fact. It's unavoidable. It's guaranteed, right? So how do we go out there and actually deal with that? How do we go out there and deal with it? You can sit around and we can have some breakouts. We can have some discussions around it. I'm only going to give you, I think, maybe 8 things that'll help you out. There are certainly more than that. There are definitely more than that. But I think I'm just going to focus on the ones that are high topic for me, high value, the things that I think that you can probably use with teams in particular. If you're a standalone person, if you're a department of one, then this is going to be something a little bit more introspective. But if you're leading other teams, those are the things that I want to focus on. So here's the first one. Number one, I want you to think that change is actually positive. Guys, probably my clicker's not working, so I'm going to rely on you. If you'll click on the next slide for me, that would be great. And you're going to have some fun with that because I have a lot of animation in there. All right, first thing is, I want you to think that change is positive. Next slide, if you would, please. Change is good. Go ahead and just put all of those bullet points up there. Most people hate change. Do you guys know that? Most people hate it. How many people like change? Like change. Most people hate it. If you hate change, you're probably gonna hate extinction because it's not fun. It's not fun being around. So you have to think you've got to get in front of it. I hate sort of standing there and just sort of being stagnant. I know that the wave is coming. I know it's gonna happen to me at some point. I'd rather get in front of the wave and sort of ride it. So again, I'll use another music quote out there. My friend Jimi Hendrix said, in order to change the world, you have to first get your head straight. You got to focus on that first. Everything that we do, everything is created twice. First mentally and then physically. It might be split second to decide to go left versus right. It might be that you have to spend a little bit more time to actually put some things into place before you go build a restaurant or a hotel, right? There's got to be some plans in place. You have to think about things like when you go to get a haircut or else it turns out like this. Everything is created twice, first mentally, then physically. So I would come out of the gate and say, change is good. And if you think like that, then probably you're going to have a little bit more control over it. Next slide, if you would. So very first thing is think positively. The second thing is focus only on the things that you can control. So this I did not create. I stole this from Stephen Covey. So this is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Many of you have seen this before. There are some concepts that resonated with me forever. And I would say that this is probably one of them that helped me be more effective and stay positive. And it goes like this. You got this whole circle that's on the outside that's called the circle of concern. Things that you absolutely care about, but you can't do anything about it. The weather, world peace. If somebody's going to buy out my company. Somebody's going to downsize my department, if I'm actually going to be let go. In a lot of ways, that is outside of your control. The things that you can control are the things that are in the smaller circle in the middle. That's your circle of influence. The things that you can directly control. How I want to spend my money, my behaviors, how I want to vote, how I want to interact with other people. So, of course, that area is going to be smaller. This is all the stuff that I can control, not all this other stuff that's out there. This happens all the time. When change starts to happen in the organization, when you hear about it, whether it's gossip, it's water cooler conversation, there's a buzz in the air and you know it, even if you're in the know, you've got to stay inside your circle of influence. Focus only on the things that you can directly control. I used to do this all the time. If I ever heard that there was something crazy going on, somebody's thinking about buying out our business, Maybe our department budget is going to get cut. If I heard any of that stuff, ollie in free, I'd get everybody in, I'd shut the door, and I'd say, listen, there's crazy stuff that's happening out there. You can't deal with that. That is outside. That's in the circle of concern. We live our life right here. You know what happens? If you'll click the next button, what you're going to see is your circle of influence will actually increase because people will recognize that. They'll actually look at it and say, these people were calm when it was a little bit crazy. My influence, my sphere starts to grow. And then at some point, that's how you get recognized. You get a couple W's, a couple wins underneath your belt, more responsibility if you want it. And then all of a sudden, you're in a position where your influence is so big, it's not in your circle of concern. So I would only focus on the things you can directly control, keep kicking butt in what you're doing. Cool things happen with that, regardless of what the change is. Next slide, if you would. So we got two. Think positively, focus on the things you can control. Next one is help others cope with change. So here's the thing. If you're in a leadership position, it probably is one of these things where you absolutely can do this. You can gather the troops together. You can talk to people to help them cope. It'll absolutely make your life a little bit better. But even if you don't have people that report to you, you can still be that calm voice once again. I think that you can talk to people on a regular basis when things start to go sideways to be that calming voice. If I was up here saying, how do you implement change? Because there were a couple of people, honestly, I think I saw 20 hands that raised and said, you actually like change. If you're a thought starter, if you're a catalyst and you enjoy that, if you want to implement it and make it happen, I believe you can do it. I don't care what the level is. A revolution can be started by a single person with a great idea. But I think when it comes to dealing with change, I also believe that a single person with just a little bit of knowledge, maybe like some of these steps, can be a calming voice in a sea of chaos out there. You can help others do that. And you know what that'll do? That'll calm everybody down, including yourself. If you can throw in some humor, great. Humor's a funny thing. You got to be cautious with it. If you're not naturally funny, I wouldn't go out there and try and start bringing the yucks, because it'll just feel uncomfortable for everybody, right? But if you can do some things out there to just add a little bit of levity, a little bit of brevity, then I think that helps also in dealing with it. So we got three of them, right? Next slide. So you're helping others cope with change. Next is answer some questions. So I just got through saying, and I will say at the very end, there's something that you can do with regards to dealing with the amount of information. I don't want you to get wrapped up in gossip and that water cooler conversation, the things you can't control. But if you're a leader, if you're a little bit in the know, and there are some things that you can do to answer questions, once again, I would do that. I would circle people up. I would give them as much information, not the stuff you're not supposed to, but just to be able to get them so that they feel more comfortable. If people are not in the know, when they don't know, their mind starts to go crazy. They're updating their resume. They're online. They're starting to be a part of the water cooler conversations. You want to avoid that. Once again, I got another quote up there. Roger Daltrey said, I want to be in a band that shared ideas and we're in it together. That idea of communication and collaboration will help your organizational culture even when there's changes going on. Think about collaborative energy. That's how I think about it. Next point. The last one on there, never feel about over-communicating. I say give as much as you possibly can. Again, staying inside your circle of influence, the things you can directly control. Next slide. What do you got? 4 so far, right? Number 5, one of my all-time favorites. Things are going crazy. You can actually set a new goal. I know everybody, hopefully, if you're at all a fan of classic rock and Sting or the Police, right? When the world is running down, you make the best of what's still around. When things are starting to go crazy, you make the best of what you have. And one of the things that are in your control, if you're a leader, and I would say everybody in here is, I would set a new goal. I'm not sure what it is. It could be small, it could be grandiose. But you will see your team start to galvanize a little bit more. Their focus, if you think about this as being positive energy, that you can control it, give them something else to focus on. So they're not sitting there worrying about all this other stuff that might be flying around them. Again, there's a couple more bullet points that are all around that. If people are overwhelmed, this will help them. It'll cool them down, but it will galvanize the organization. I think about that with philanthropy. I think there are a couple things that will always get everybody to all focus on the single thing. You want everybody going toward true north. You got to be the calming voice out there. Set a new goal. It doesn't have to be something too crazy, but if you want to put something out there for people to focus on, it'll help them out. That's number 5. Number 6. So here's where it starts to get a little bit crazier for some people in the room, that I think you can actually anticipate it. You know it's going to happen, right? It's happening right now. And if you know that, could you not get in front of it? So 2 ways that you can honestly do this, and we talked about it already this week, right? Start to look at some of the data that's out there. Get involved with TD2K. Look at the reporting that comes out. Whether it's black box, white box, people report. Get some of the competency information that's coming from the National Restaurant Association. Attend as many events as you possibly can. Things like Chart will help out. It's not just for the networking, but that is a really cool thing when you go out there and you're learning from other people. I've been coming here for 18 years, and I can tell you that the greatest thing that I'll ever do is network with people and figure out what it is that you're smarter about than I am and put that into my noggin. And the more that I'm aware of that, I can actually feel the tea leaves. I can actually see what's going on when change starts to happen. You're not going to be able to control all the change, but if you can actually be a part of it and anticipate it, that leads me to the next slide, which is that you can actually plan for it. You can actually do something about it. If you're in the know, you might actually be a part of it. I'm going to talk about creating it in just a second. But you can actually plan for it. Another one of my favorite quotes from Katy Perry, a little top 40 for us. If you want to achieve something great, there will be curveballs. You know it for a fact. If you want to do anything great, stuff's going to happen to you, right? It's all about how you deal with this. She said you just have to dodge them every once in a while. One of the ways you can do that is you can do an annual self-assessment. Now, the way that I talk about a self-assessment, it could be an individual, or it could be your team, or if you've got big impact and influence in your company, you can do this organizationally. I use the analogy and the acronym of a SWOT analysis. You guys have probably all done something like this before, right? You've heard of SWOT. What does the S stand for? Strengths. W. Weaknesses. O. T. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. If you were to just do a little bit of that work, half day, full day, couple hours, you do that on a regular basis, number one, a lot of these issues, the weaknesses, the threats, the opportunities start to get smaller. But the more that you can actually do that internal self-reflection, gets you in a much better place to actually anticipate, like I said, and plan for the change anyway. Got one more bullet point up there. And it's all about, for me, that last point, addressing it and implement it will actually make it easier for you to do the next slide. The next slide, you can actually create it. Now, again, some of you are not going to like this at all. I think that you can get in front of it and actually do something about it. And again, it does not matter to me what level you are in the organization. You can create it before it happens to you. You can influence it. One of my all-time favorite thoughts is that spot right in the middle. Great leaders don't just learn to live with or manage change. They actually make it happen. They impact it. They influence. They create it. Or better yet, they help other people navigate around it. The great philosopher Bono said, and if you'll put that up there, the world is more malleable than you think, and it's waiting for you to hammer it into shape. You have the opportunity to actually create it, not let this stuff happen to you. It's going to have you start at number one. If you can't think about it as being positive, you don't think about it as energy, you're going to sit there and woe is me, stuff happens to me, then you get what's coming to you. And you're going to be doing nothing but reflecting on it, wondering what happened, like we were talking about earlier. Stuff will happen to you. I have one more slide. I'm going to put all of those bullet points up there in case you want to take a picture, just because we had all 8 of those in one place. Think positively. Stay in your circle of influence, those things that you can directly control. Help others cope with it. Communicate. I think you can always communicate. You know, there might be something to be said about over-communication. I don't believe it is, except for the stuff you really shouldn't be sharing if you're in a leadership position. You can set a new goal, anticipate the change, actually do something to plan for it, and ultimately create it. Remember, single person, a little bit of knowledge. You can be the voice in a sea of chaos. I had fun doing my best for you guys. Thanks so much.